Uh, this, my name is Valerie Hansen, and I'm the author of The Year 1000, When Explorers Connected the World and Globalization Began. And in that book, I suggested the possibility that the Vikings arrived in the Yucatan Peninsula. And the point of this YouTube slideshow is to show you, to give you all the evidence that we have to support that claim. So here's a map of the Viking voyages around the year 1000 to the Americas. And we can see that this point on the map, so this is the Vikings voyaging from Denmark and Norway, and then they went to Iceland, and then from Iceland to Greenland, and then from Greenland to North America. And they land. The reason we can be so sure about this is that on the northern tip of Newfoundland, in an archaeological site, a town where there's an archaeological site called Lansaw Meadows, is where the Vikings landed. And the reason we can be so sure is there's an archaeological site there. And it was discovered in the 1960s by two archaeologists and the Ingstads, a husband and wife. And when the Ingstads arrived, they asked the Canadians, if there were any evidence, any possible settlements of the Norse. And the Canadians said there were some abandoned houses on the shore along here, and they thought that they were the homes of the indigenous native peoples of Canada, not the Vikings, but they showed them to the Ingstads. The Ingstads began to dig, and they dug there from 1961 to 1968. And on the last day of the last year, they found this pin, and this was the most clear-cut evidence of the Viking presence in Lansaw Meadows. So before the pin was discovered, nobody knew whether or not the Vikings had been in Canada. They suspected, this is from evidence in the Icelandic sagas, they suspected that Vinland was located somewhere in either northeastern Canada or New England, but no one knew for sure. But with the find of this bronze pin, everyone agreed that it was incontrovertible. The Vikings had arrived in Canada, and the carbon dating showed that it was right around the year 1000. There was other evidence of Viking presence. This is one of the houses at Lansaw Meadows, and this is a room, a metal working room, where they found scraps of iron, and there was metalworking in the Americas in the year 1000. People knew how to work gold and copper and arsenic. This was mostly in the Andes and a little bit coming into Mexico, but nobody was working iron. So that was also evidence of Viking presence. And then in this room here, there were two finds linked with sewing, a spindle whorl, which is a weight that you use when you've got a lot of wool and it's like fluffy wool and you're trying to make yarn out of it. You twist the wool and you use the spindle whorl, to hold the wool down as you twist it and make it into thread. And there were also found a needle hone, which is a tool that the women used to sharpen their needles. So there was other evidence of the Viking presence. If they hadn't found that bronze pin, people still would have been convinced. But the bronze pin really clinched the case for everybody. And we call that kind of artifact a diagnostic artifact. When people find something that diagnoses, that you see it, and then that's just that one thing is evidence of a given society's presence. So in this case, the bronze pin showed the Vikings had been there. So before they found that pin, no one was positive that the Vikings had been there, the pin or the iron scraps or the spindle whorl or the needle hone. But once they found them, everyone was convinced. Now, let's think about the possibility of the Vikings and whether or not they could have landed on the Yucatan Peninsula. This is the cultural realm of the Maya, and in the year 1000, their capital was at Chichen Itza. It's important, this is a map of the currents in the ocean, and you'll see above the equator, the currents run clockwise. Below the equator, they run counterclockwise. And then specifically here in the North Atlantic, this is the exact movements. And you can see these are the surface currents, the red. The blue is the deeper water. And you can see that if you were blown off course, let's say you were here at Lansaw Meadows and you were working your way down the coast, you might have been caught up in these currents, which would bring you around to the Yucatan Peninsula. Okay, so that's a key thing to keep in mind, that the movement of the currents makes it plausible possible that the Vikings could have been blown off course and brought to the Yucatan Peninsula. And the timing is also perfect because we know that the Vikings were at Lansaw Meadows in the year 1000, so they could easily have come. If there's evidence of Vikings in the Yucatan from the year 1000, we know that they were in the neighborhood in the year 1000. Okay, so now we're back, and we're just going to go back to Chichen Itza and look here just at a couple of things. This is the most famous structure at Chichen Itza, this building, and it's quite famous because at the not the solstice, but when the sun, halfway between the solstice in mid-March and mid-September, the sun's rays form a dancing dragon along the edge here. This is the ball court at Chichen Itza. It's the biggest ball court anywhere at any Maya site. And this is the Temple of the Warriors. And this huge building used to have murals inside, and you can no longer go inside the building. You can't go inside any building at Chichen Itza. But researchers in the 1920s and 30s did go inside, and they made these watercolors of paintings that have since been destroyed. And these are reconstructed paintings. So the paintings are lost. So our only evidence is secondhand from these watercolors that were made by an artist named Anne Extel Morris. And here you can see there was a lot of Mayan art showed invasions of villages. And here we've got gray people invading this village and capturing the locals. So these people are gray, and these people are white with like black horizontal stripes on them. They did not necessarily look like this, although it's possible that was war paint. But the artist does this to show the two sides in the conflict. And then here are the pictures that suggest the presence of the Vikings. This is a naval battle scene, a marine battle. You can see a ship here, and here is one of the blonde-haired victims, possible Viking. He's got beads in his hair, and we know that the Maya put beads in the hair. They depicted captives that they had taken from other people and showed them with beads in their hair. We've got a fish here. This is interesting. The bottom of the sea, it seems to be marked with fish skins, just like that. And then this is another boat, and we see that these are shields, and this boat seems to be submerged. This fish is menacingly swimming near this man, and it looks like it's going to bite his wrist. Here's a close-up. You can see better how the Viking or the victim, this POW, is faring. There's another scene and these are also Anne Extel Morris's watercolors. These are fragments. These were recovered from pieces of the mural that had fallen on the ground. After she made these copies, there was a hurricane, and so all of these, the original paintings have been destroyed. And then here are some close-ups, and you can see here, this victim also has his hair someone is holding his hair, and it also has beads in it, and he's being thrown into the water. And here we have a blonde-haired victim who's got ropes holding his hands behind him, and he's in the water. So let's go here for a second. Not everybody thinks that these are Vikings. There are people who say that in that same way, in that village scene I showed you where people were gray or they were white with black stripes, that they may have chosen to they may have chosen to depict the two sides in this way. But this is the only pictures that look like this. And so they're different from all other Mayan art. And so there are a number of Mayan experts, including Mary Miller, who's now at the Getty Research Institute, and the late Michael D. Coe, who was one of my colleagues at Yale, who do think that this is compelling evidence of the Viking presence. So that's one set of murals from the Temple of the Warriors. There's another building at Chichen Itza called the Nunnery, and it has this picture in it. And this is a very interesting picture. It doesn't show anybody with blonde hair, so there's no possible Vikings. But this vessel it shows a boat, and the boat has individual planks in it called strakes. And all of the boats in the Americas were dugout canoes. There's one exception of Native Americans who live in California called the Chumash. But this boat was made with planks. And so some people, Mike Coe, thought that this was more convincing evidence of the Viking presence than the blonde-haired victims. This is a picture of a boat that was excavated in Norway from 1820 of a Viking ship, and you can see here very clearly marked the individual planks in the boat. These look like each plank has no breaks in it, but actually they did have breaks in them, and they were just pressed very close together to make it look like that. And we have pictures of this kind of Viking ship also in the Bayeux Tapestry from the 1070s. And there's one final piece of evidence for how, the possibility that the Vikings were blown off course, is that there's a village here in Mexico. It's called Sheikh Shakan, and the Alonso Pons visited it in 1588. And when he talked to the people who lived there, he said, this is a very unusual name for a village. And they said, that's because we were founded by people, dark-skinned people, and who were blown off course, and they landed here, and they're called their leader Sheikh. And that would imply the possibility that they came from Africa, that they came from an Arabic-speaking place. But the key thing is that they were blown off course and they landed on the Yucatan. So we have evidence of other people being blown off course and landing on the Yucatan, which fits in perfectly with the pictures of the currents that I showed you. In conclusion, before the 1960s, people thought that the Vikings might have gone to Canada, to northeastern Canada, or New England on the basis of the Icelandic sagas, the evidence in the Icelandic sagas, but they had no hard evidence. And then once they did the digs at Lansaw Meadows and they found the bronze cloak fastening pin, that confirmed that the Vikings had landed there. And similarly, the murals from Chichen Itza suggest the possibility that blonde-haired Vikings landed on the Yucatan Peninsula. And perhaps in the future, archaeologists will find something like that bronze cloak fastening pin to prove they landed there. Until archaeologists find a diagnostic artifact like that points to the presence of the Vikings, this is an intriguing but unproven possibility. Thanks for listening.